Was it your decision? Did you ask him to put that accent?
No, I didn't. But poor Uday. I think I should take the responsibility, for the accent choice. He had all the time in the world for us, and I think that's part of the magic of Shah Rukh Khan is just his graciousness, his grace.
Who's most likely to come late for the interview?
Everybody except Rishi Kapoor and except Mr. Bachchan.
If you're a romantic person by nature, which I think almost every Indian is, you must have watched and liked The Romantics on Netflix, which is directed by Smriti Mundhra. Very warm welcome. She joins us for a quick conversation. First of all, we love the series. I'm from Jalandhar. The first episode is named The Boy from Jalandhar. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how big of a Hindi film fan are you?
At this point, 15, 20, never really stopped.
And the internet wants to know, Uday asks in the series that, which accent you want me to put. Was it your decision? Did you ask him to put that accent?
No, I didn't. But poor Uday. I think, look, I think, when you travel extensively and you live in different parts of the world, sometimes you sort of slip into the accent of the person who is speaking to you. And I was the one doing the interview. So I think I should take the responsibility, for the accent choice.
Oh, so you are responsible for that.
I will take responsibility for it. Yes.
Okay, of course, we have to address the fact that we saw Aditya Chopra. So many journalists, they've chased him and we haven't seen him much, especially in an interview. Of course, a few of public appearances here and there, but this time he sat down for a chat. How big of a task was that for you?
Herculean. It was enormous. It was honestly the toughest part about making the series, besides the actual, work of editing. And while Adityana had many off-the-record conversations, just for context in my research, he was very reluctant to sit in front of a camera for obvious reasons. But ultimately, I think he relented because I think somewhere he probably could recognize that the story of his father and the story of his father's legacy is, couldn't be told without him. He is such a big part of that legacy. So I think eventually that's what.
And when you think of Hindi films and if there is a documentary series like that, it usually end up being about top stars, let's say 3 Khans. And did you try to break that mold? Was that in your mind that, okay, I have to go beyond that and explore this side?
Definitely. The goal was always to tell the story of India through its most prominent and revered auteur. And, of course, you spend 3 years on a series, you want people to watch it. So, I wanted, and I know that, documentaries sometimes still people equate, in their minds with, something academic or a little boring, so I wanted the series to have the same level, of evoke the same level of excitement.
If you can define that one moment where you met Shah Rukh Khan, and you can be as elaborative as you want.
Oh man, it was incredible. I have been a Shah Rukh Khan fan since childhood.
Also, was it the first time you were meeting him or you had met him in the past?
Well, my very first time meeting him. And DDLJ was a coming of age for me. I was a teenager. I was a young teenager when that film released, and I just remember being so dazzled by Shah Rukh Khan and have been a fan of his work ever since. But what really, left an impression on me in interviewing him was one, of course, how many amazing insights he had to share, but also just his demeanor. He is someone who the entire world seeks his attention, and his time and his love. And when he walked into the room to sit for the interview, he knew the name of every single person on my crew. He shook everybody's hand. And he just was incredibly gracious with his time. He didn't say, okay, you have 20 minutes and then, no, why are you asking this? He just, sat and chatted, and he made us feel like he had all the time in the world for us. And I think that's part of the magic of Shah Rukh Khan is just his graciousness, his grace. But, Shah Rukh, of course, was a huge thing. I also was really excited to meet and talk to Ranbir Kapoor because he's just one of my favorites. Of course, Rishi Kapoor, was a really memorable, being his last interview, was a really memorable experience for me.
Since you mentioned Rishi Kapoor, I have to show you something from my bookshelf, which is his autobiography, which is Kullam Kulla. And, I've loved his journey. And since this was the probably last time we were getting to, or you were getting to interview him, Did any moment stay with you?
I think it was really the feeling of how nostalgic, he was feeling, and at that time, we kind of knew, that he was ill and, and he was battling illness, but he just seemed so lively and, and he looked so good and everything on that day that it was impossible to imagine that we would lose him just a month later. But in hindsight, like maybe there was something, like maybe he was thinking a little bit about his own mortality and in a mood to reminisce, about his career and his, the most important relationships in his life, including, his relationship with Yash Chopra. And it was honestly really amazing.
And other than Aditya Chopra, who was, the most difficult to get?
Trying to think who, there were definitely some people where scheduling was a problem, was a challenge, just because they're very, very busy. Salman Khan is someone whose time, is very precious and, very difficult, to lock down. But there was no shortage of will, or desire to participate, in the series. Everyone was really open and really game for it. So I think maybe the biggest challenge was honestly scheduling.
There's a lot of buzz around the documentary and also a lot of appreciation. But when something reaches millions, there's also a bit of criticism as well. One bit is that a lot of people are also criticizing it for the way it shows nepotism, and they say that this looks like a PR work for nepotism. How do you react?
I think any critique, any thoughtful, well-meaning critique, I accept and I'm grateful for. I think the idea or the debate around nepotism gets very flattened, particularly on social media, and, emotions get heightened and, things like that. I think my only aim was to, one, acknowledge it, call out the elephant in the room, but also, show it with a little bit more dimension. Nepotism is not something that's unique to the Hindi film industry. It exists in every industry, in every corner of the world, since the beginning of time. It just, I think, becomes a flashpoint, in film industries, whether it's Hollywood, there's big debate about that in Hollywood as well. And also, of course, in India and in the Hindi film industry. But I think, what I wanted to show was an acknowledgement, of that, and give space, for people who have benefited from such privileges, to talk about it, in whatever way they choose, and chose. So yeah, that was sort of my job as a filmmaker and my aim as a filmmaker. And then, I think the debate is healthy, especially when it's in good faith.
Now the last segment, who's most likely to? Think of everybody who's featured in your documentary series. Who's most likely to come late for the interview?
Everybody except Rishi Kapoor and except Mr. Bachchan. They were very prompt. But I don't begrudge, because we're asking for precious time from very, very busy people. But I think most everyone turned up late.
Who's most likely to check his or her frame again and again?
I think maybe Ayushmann, but I'll tell you why. It's because he was wearing glasses, and I really wanted him to wear his glasses because I really loved his look that day, and he was very concerned to make sure that the light, wasn't coming in his in the glare in the glasses. So we stopped frequently to check for that.
Who's most likely to tell a lie to sound interesting?
Me, I think. Whatever I need to do to get the great stories, out of my participants.
Who's most likely to be controversial?
Aditya Chopra.
Why would you say that?
Because I think he calls it like it is. He's not he's not careful with his words. He's thoughtful about his words, but he wasn't ever, like, okay, how do I say this? How do I talk about this? How do I avoid this topic? He was very forthright, in everything I asked him, and I probably asked him the most amount of sensitive questions. So I would say him.
Okay, thank you so very much. With this, we've come to an end of this chat. If you haven't watched The Romantics yet, go watch it, especially if you're a Bollywood, actually, as they say in the series, if you're a Hindi film fan. This is Arun Singh signing off.